Hey, welcome to Fight Stories. I'm Tyler Morrison. I'm here with John Moses, and we got our guest today from Rock Solid Wrestling, Ben McCully, aka Asher Benjamin. And we're excited to have you here, man, because we got Rock Solid Wrestling coming into Bracebridge, Ontario, my hometown, this Saturday night. You're going to want to check it out at the Bracebridge Sportsplex. It looks like it's going to be a great night at the old town hall. Are you guys ready to rock or what?
Are we fighting at the town hall? I thought it was in a school. Oh, I'm all discombobulated.
Yeah, it is part, like the sportsplex is part of there's a high school there too. So it's got everything. It's got a big swimming pool and like a theater. It's kind of
That's
multifaceted.
cool.
Great.
Yeah.
Town hall.
So I'll fight the mayor. I'll fight a lifeguard. I'll fight a child. Whoever wants
That's
to get in
right.
my way.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everyone's getting the table, ladder, chair treatment on
Oh,
Saturday
hell
night.
yeah.
Bring your
You
grandma.
guys don't already have a wrestler called the Mayor?
I'm taking the nickname now. Asher the Mayor Benjamin. Done.
Hell yeah.
Perfect. Well, I gotta say, you have my dream job. I think. I mean, stand-up comedy. That's what we do, and we enjoy it. But heel manager. That's probably, I'd say, it's on my vision board.
It's it's your cousin. It's the stand-up comedy's cousin. It's the same kind of
Yeah,
thing as you kind of turn yourself up to 11. Everyone knows jokes are just jokes, and no one should ever be offended. Same thing when a heel wrestler gets on the mic at a live show and insults the shit out of you. It's not to be taken too seriously, but if you do feel something, that's what it's all about.
exactly.
Right. You wanted to feel something.
Yeah, and I mean it's a great gig to have to like make people hate you, and the more people hate you, the better you are at your job, and the more you're going to get paid for it. Like where else in the world, other than stand-up comedy and pro wrestling, can that happen?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
totally.
Well, I mean, really, they shouldn't hate you in stand up, but inevitably in this day and age, half of the fucking people online end up doing it anyway.
You know you're
Oh,
doing something right
100%.
if you're riling up half your
Right.
audience.
Exactly. You're making them
Exactly.
feel something. If they're not talking about you, what are you doing, right? So, no, I think that's like the coolest. And the just to get into that side of it, were you doing a bunch of like wrestling before that, or were you always in the manager sort of role coming up through the ranks?
It's a cliche for sure, but it's cliche for a reason, and it's something I've adopted in my 40s now that I'm 24 years as a professional wrestler, and that is to
Yeah.
work smarter, not harder. And so when I started, I'm from the East Coast originally, and I'm from the last generation of wrestlers that toured full time. So my job was wrestling 6 nights a week. We toured the Maritimes, and there was one day off, and every other day was in a different arena. And so that's kind of where I came from. And then you fast forward 20 plus years and add a 24-year radio career on top of it, and balancing everything, finding this perfect balance of, oh, I'm going to get paid the same whether I'm getting dropped on my head 10 times as I am if I'm going to get dropped on my head once, and I get to talk on the microphone more. Sign me up. That's the gig I want to do.
100%.
Right.
Oh yeah.
It's like a way to stay active in the business without beating up your body. It's not like retiring, but it's sort of like it's the next step, I guess.
Yes. And if anyone goes to a Rock Solid Wrestling show, you've seen, hey, wait a minute, Asher Benjamin wrestles quite regularly too. So I get sucked into it. If you can imagine Bobby the Brain Heenan from the 80s, I'm the
Yeah.
2025 version of Bobby Heenan. I've got my stable of wrestlers I manage, but we're
Yes.
always looking for an advantage. So I'll put the tights on and they actually look like Bobby the Brain Heenan's tights. And I get sucked into making tag team matches or handicap matches all the time. So I'm still pretty active from a wrestling standpoint, but there's a lot of shows where I'm just dressed to the nines in my $2,000 outfit, looking great on the outside of the ring.
I think that's
but
such
still
a
throwing a shot or holding an ankle and doing that thing when given the opportunity.
If the ref's not looking.
Nice.
The heel manager role is an iconic role all the way up in wrestling. And you mentioned Bobby the Brain Heenan, as you know, he is one of the GOATs, if not the best of all time, in that role. How big of an influence was he on you when you sort of pivoted into that role?
The ultimate influence, because he's the greatest of all time. You list like the best bad guys in wrestling, and
Yeah.
Bobby the Brain Heenan's in the top 5, and that's all encompassing. That's wrestlers, personalities, and all. So Bobby the Brain Heenan being one of the best characters, best bad guys, period, obviously puts him at the top of the list as far as in inspiration. And if you look at the body of work for the broadest stretch of a 5 to 6 year period, where Cody Deaner was the Canadian heavyweight champion in Rock Solid Wrestling, and I was the Bobby Heenan across from him. It was parallel to what you saw in the 80s. I was Bobby Heenan sending a different wrestler at him at every show. He was the Hulk Hogan champion that I was trying to take the title off of. And like, that's 5 years of my career doing that.
Oh, that's so good. I think that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. What are you going to say?
No, I just think that's amazing. It's certainly the precedent that was set by Bobby Heenan and how they did that. You know, it definitely lends itself well to what you're doing now, and it that style. It can't truly be replicated, but if you can do it in your own way, which you are, I think that's super cool.
What's important to note is Bobby the Brain Heenan comes from another generation, and you could say like some people, a lot of people still thought it was real. And you fast forward to 2025, even with the bad guys, the heels, they still want to be cool. They still want the girls to be like, yeah, you're cool. And I'm like, fuck that. I am a bad guy, and I don't want anyone to like me. If you think I'm doing something cool, that's the last time you'll ever see me do that. So that lost art is kind of what Asher Benjamin's all about, is being
I love it.
the antithesis to anything cool, anything good.
The total juice. Yeah, just juicing it up. So it's, I think that's a great way to look at it, because ultimately you're going to get the best results from the fans that way. If you want them to be booing. If they're not booing, then it becomes almost anti-hero stuff, the way sort of Stone Cold, flipped the script there. And I think that sort of happened organically with his character. But if you're, really leaning into how the psychology of it, you're going to, have more long-term hate as a heel.
I think The Rock's a great example, because like during the peak and his come up, he was, they tried to shove him down people's throats as this white meat good guy, and it wasn't working. So they started booing him. So they leaned into him being bad. And so he became a heel, and he was good at it. And then eventually he was so good at it, people started cheering him. And so it was like a wink, wink at those fans. And it was the cool heel. He might have been the original cool bad guy. But like I said, when you start doing something that is getting more smiles and laughs, like, oh, he's a good bad guy, it's like, okay, now we got to switch it up because they're starting to like me. Fuck that. I gotta get them back to hating me. And so that's why I'm proud of Rock Solid Wrestling crowds are like the best crowds in independent wrestling in Ontario, because it's families, it's kids. It's also the only show that consistently draws over 400 people at every show, unlike some other indies that it's like, we got our 100 people and we're cool with that. But those 100 people are like,
I was at an indie in New Jersey, and it was in a VFW. Like, that's how small it was, dude. There was 2 rows of seats around the ring. And my wife at the time didn't realize that when she bought me front row seats and paid the extra premium, that there was only going to be 1 row of seats behind us. There might have been 20 people at that place, and one of the wrestlers was named the Jew.
Now, was he a baby face or a heel?
I think he was a heel. He had a giant a giant hat, and he was like basically like running around like the Jew might as well have been like Erwin R. Shyster. Like he was like the banker.
Oh no!
It was a bad one.
Wow.
Oh,
Well,
that's
what I was going to say is there is one market in particular that comes to mind, and it's where we run, and there's this one crowd or contingency of the crowd. It's like 20 guys, and they make it their mission to like cheer the bad guys, boo the good guys. Like there's, we've all seen that in wrestling at some point.
Yeah.
But when Asher Benjamin comes out, they don't cheer me. They don't.
nice.
They hate me and they chant Ashley at me. So it's like I gotta win.
Yeah,
it's a victory.
yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And do you think that by not allowing them to ever like you, like that extends your shelf life in this role, right? Because to try and if you become so good that they love you, that's got to make it a little bit tougher to do your job out there, I think.
Well, we're always open to telling whatever story is there for the telling, and people switch their allegiances and they turn face or they turn heel. But I've got no interest in that. It's just too fun to have a crowd in the palm of your hand. And my style, you'll see it this Saturday, if you've seen it in any Rock Solid wrestling show, is I'm on the microphone. I always come out and I always get the crowd up first. Like, hey, good evening, Bracebridge. What a great night to be here. We're so happy to be here. And they think, oh, we like him. And then there's always something that I twist and turn.
Yeah.
And so I always like to bring you up to just sweep the rug out from under you. And that's a lost art form as well. But it's it's too good to get the booze, and it's too fun to be hated. So I don't see it changing anytime soon.
And going back to the parallel between stand-up comedy and what you're just talking about, that's something that, like, when I'm doing stand-up, if I go into a town, I was in, where is it? Like Carnarvon near Halliburton. So it's a small town. And I asked the crowd how many people traveled here from Halliburton tonight. Pretty much everyone. They all cheered. And so I start naming off all the NHL players from Halliburton. I'm like, Bernie Nichols, everyone cheers. Glenn Sharpley, everyone cheers. I go through all, like 5 of them. Matt Duchesne, and they're, fever pitch. I'm like, you know how I know that? I go, because your arena has a mural of each one of those guys on the side of the building. And every time I'm driving to my cottage, I stop in your town to take a fucking shit. Then they all just start booing. That's how I start the show.
Yeah.
So I totally relate to that. Twist them around. Like
I was doing shows in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or maybe it might have been Oklahoma City, and I was there Wednesday through Sunday. And so Wednesday night I come out. There's like 20 people in the audience. This is before Trump got elected the first time. And I said, round of applause if you're voting for Trump. 18 people clapped. And I go, round of applause if you're voting for Hillary. And the only people that didn't clap when I asked for Trump was this lesbian couple. So I said, round of applause if you voted for Hillary. And I'm just looking at them, expecting them to clap. They just sit there with their arms crossed. And then I go, Hillary can't even pull lesbians in Oklahoma. I go, who'd you vote for? And they went, Gary Johnston. So then for the next 6 shows, I told the DJ to play I Am a Real American. And I came out chanting Hillary, Hillary, Hillary as I walked to the stage, and people were just going, bah! It was the closest I've ever had to like a wrestling entrance in 25 years of comedy. And it was awesome. Like, they were into it. They were booing. I did get some complaint cards, and that was my last weekend at the Looney Bin franchise down south.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are great. I love pulling them in and then cutting them down. I mean, Ty, you do that in comedy all the time. You're like, you got to give them a good one before you bash them over the head,
Oh, yeah. You can't let them off the hook. You can't pander to them, right? And so, but I like your job because you don't have to do any of that at all. It's like the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Nice. So, and so we were on the call, we were just talking about you're from like the Collingwood area, or you're from out east, but right now you're based in Ontario. When you started wrestling, did you start out east? Is originally where you got into it?
Yeah,
And
I got trained by the Cardinal Sinners, which is a group of big bad guy wrestlers who are like the last kind of dying breed generation of big men. So you had Bobby Roode, who is in the WWE currently, Cowboy Mike Hughes, and Brody Steele, who wrestles internationally. And those are the three big dudes that trained me. I was good enough to get brought along full time, and my radio career is what's bounced me back and forth across the country. And I just, wherever I land, I kind of get hooked up with
The local wrestling outfit.
the local wrestling
that's
outfit.
great.
And so, yeah, and,
Nice.
sometimes it's, please come in, radio guy, and give us the free publicity and promotion, and we'll give you a spot. Other times,
Yeah.
especially with Rock Solid Wrestling, it's been having to earn my keep and kind of starting all over again, paying dues and working my way up and kind of proving myself. So it's a very tight knit, old school, well done promotion, Rock Solid Wrestling. And so it's kind of, I cursed it at the time, like, what do you mean you're not just going to take the radio guy who can give you free advertising and put him on your show? What do you mean I got to set up the ring again? But going back to square one, I wouldn't have it any other way. 6 years later.
and you're
So,
on
I
Rock
got a lot of-
95 now, right? Is that?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
I
Yeah,
do the
I
Drive
didn't
Home
put
show.
two and two. I never put two and two together until now. I hear you all the time on the radio. Oh, that's awesome.
So tell me about. I got a lot of questions. So tell me about. So you're saying like you're going to town to do a radio gig, but like you're going to work a radio job somewhere in Canada for a year or two. Is that what I'm putting together, or like what's that look like?
That's not been by design. That's just been the reality. And
Right.
I was averaging 2 years in a place, and
Okay.
thankfully I've been at Rock 95 for 3.5 years. I've been
Okay.
living in Collingwood for 9 years this week, and so this is the longest and the best situation I've been in, and the better something's worked out.
That's awesome. Rock 95 is a
So-
great station. Shout out to Dave Carr. Love those guys.
So, all right. So you're going. When did you get into radio? How old were you when you got into radio?
I was still in high school when I got into it because I was like listening to the oldies station that was broadcast out of Charlottetown, and I was calling in the request show and hearing myself in the radio. Oh, that's cool. And then I won something on
getting
the
a kick.
radio, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so like I did my high school announcements. So I was like the guy doing.
So did
like,
I. I did that because I was trying to get into
Yeah.
the Ryerson to do radio.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the local radio station came to all the high schools and was like, we want somebody to come and be a star. And like, I didn't even ask. Our student council was like, McCully's going to do it. We're going to send him.
Yeah.
And then I got my foot in the door, and then I started working there every summer that I was in university, and it just snowballed from there.
And so while that's happening, so that's your interest. So when do you start wrestling? Like at this point, are you just power bombing your little brother, or?
Well, I'm the little brother, and I got and this is the good.
So
seg-
you were getting power. So you were getting
Yeah.
power bombed.
It's a good segue into the fight stories, because my older brother has actually been a mixed martial artist, and he's used me as kind of a guinea pig since the 90s. I'm not gonna say that, like, I'm not gonna be the guy that's like, we watched the UFC before it was cool.
Yeah.
But we watched the UFC before it was cool. UFC 1.
No. I would
We
argue
watched
that.
it.
I would argue we watched UFC when it was the coolest. You know, that was. Those were so cool, dude. The Kumites, those were the coolest.
Yeah, Emmanuel Yarborough and Keith Hackney and whole Wild Wild West thing. So my brother was into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu before anyone else in our universe knew what it was. So
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So I was a wrestling fan since literally before I could remember, and I've only recently in life put two and two together that like when I was like 2, my godfather started watching wrestling with me, and I just, because I've always just loved it. So when I got into radio and broadcasting, I did an internship at a TV station, and while there, I did a story on the local wrestling organization that came through town, and they were like, "Hey, great job! You know your stuff. Do you want to be our ring announcer?" And I was like, "Boom, I'm in." So the funny story was, like, I should never have gotten trained to be a wrestler. Like, I'm 5'7", and I look like I look. When I tell people I'm a wrestler, they kind of give me the side eye. But then you come out to a Rock Solid Wrestling show, and like, I'm one of the more talented people on the roster. But it all started with being the ring announcer and not getting paid like we had agreed to.
Yeah.
So this promotion was not paying me, and I was like skipping university classes to go on the road with them and just like expecting pay. And then finally one day, their Cardinal Sinners training school was coming up, and so I said, "Hey, you haven't paid me like you said you were going to. Put me through training for free, and we'll call it even." And they went, "Now we officially don't have to pay this kid, and he won't last a week." And sure enough, I was one of 10 people that started, and there was 2 of us left at the end, and we became full-time wrestlers.
So what's that training look like?
This was a cold, dank warehouse in Bedford, Nova Scotia, outside of Halifax, that we would travel to, and we would wrestle Friday nights, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So it was weekends for 6 weeks before they would let us like put matches together in training, and then it was another 3 months of that, and then it was like, okay, you've learned what you can learn. Your real education is in front of a crowd on the road. So that's where the training really begins. So it was
but like the train, so you're training for 3 months, but like, is it like you taking bumps? Is it like you like, all right, here's, you know, you got to eat, you know, 3 dozen eggs a day, like Gaston, like what are the paces that they're putting you through? Like what, you know, like what's the training? Like, I know that like the timing, but like what does your day-to-day look like, I guess?
Well, I was, remember, a poor university student that didn't have a dime to my name, hence why I fandangled to get trained for free. And so it's funny you mentioned food, because we would go and take our lunch break. And at the time, early 2000s, the Atkins diet was huge. And these big 6'5" bodybuilder dudes, we'd go to Arby's, and they would order all these sandwiches and throw away the buns with the cheese on it, and they would just eat the meat. And then I'd go and pick the buns, and that's what I would eat. That's the only way I could get calories, because I couldn't afford anything. But the one thing that was good about Cardinal Sinners is they sat us down and we watched tape before they even let us in the ring, and they told us how a wrestling match works. And we watched some of the best matches of all time: Flair, Steamboat, classic WWF. And it was like, it was like a classroom setting, and until we understood the psychology, then it was like, okay. And they'd see who got it and who didn't. And they're like, okay, you get it. Now you can get in the ring. Learn to lock up. Learn to fall. And it was just drills. It was drilling. It was just like jiu-jitsu. It was just like anything. Right. It was drilling. And then when you got it, it was on to the next thing. And we drill for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like I said, eventually they were like, okay, we can start putting matches together.
So, and it was it the drilling that, you know, where the other 8 guys fell by the wayside? They're like, this is just beating me up too much.
Yeah, pretty much. It was like, I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm not a tough guy by any means. I mean, maybe getting through it is tough, but like, I just was like, there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing this. This is like a dream come true. Oh my God. And I was a natural, like, and Brody Steele once said, you know, what he lacks in physical fitness, he makes up for in this weird natural ability. And so I just applied that and got through it. And I was hurting. I was sore. I'd go home and cry in the shower and not be able to move, but I just didn't let them see it, and made it through.
So what is it to like, because I've gotten like, you know, knocked unconscious before. I've taken hits in hockey games, and I've gotten, you know, plenty of punches in my face. But like, what are the, like, when you're getting slammed and you're getting shook and you're getting rattled, like, what is, like, are you getting concussed sometimes? Like, what are the types of injuries? Like, how are you getting beaten up? Like, how are you feeling? If you can describe it, you know? Because I'm just wondering, like, what is it about wrestling specifically that might be unique to wrestling, or maybe, you know, some mixed martial arts stuff, but it's like those slams over and over and over again. To me, I don't know how I would take it.
The most important part of training is learning how to take the bumps properly so that you don't get injured. And it's kind of an age-old adage in wrestling, is like, everything hurts, but as long as you're not injured. There's a big difference between hurt and injured. And the biology and science of falling on the meatiest part of your back on plywood and steel that has a little flex to it, the harder you hit it, actually, the better it'll be for you. I've been lucky enough that I've knocked on wood. I've never had a serious injury from the ring, other than 25 years in, just this past year, I ruptured my eardrum. So that was the first real injury I've ever had. Your body calluses to it. Your body just, and the more active you are, hence the 6 nights a week thing, my body just kind of became like just letting the river take me. When you have time off, it's so tough getting back into it. So when you haven't bumped in a while, you kind of feel it, but you just do it properly and you won't get injured. So I've never had a real injury, except I got boxed in the ear at a show this past year and I ruptured my eardrum. So I was out for a few months. Other than that, I've been lucky.
Do you think that's like a body type or like a DNA thing? Like, are there guys who are just like, they're taking the, like, they just can't take the bumps? Like or is it just a thing that if you do it over and over and over again, eventually everybody's going to, pass the mustard?
Well, there's certainly an element of it that like practice makes perfect. And the more you do it, the better you get it. Some people just never get it. Some people it's just something doesn't click. And if you hesitate even a little bit, you're going to get hurt. And there's a lot of that.
But we see that with comics. Some people just never get it, buddy.
That's true.
And they do podcasts about fighting.
Hey,
settle down.
Yeah, that's it, buddy. Wait, save it
Give
for
him the Vince
break.
McMahon.
You want to do the Vince McMahon? It's more like,
yeah, he's cocking over the table.
That's hilarious. Vinnie Mac.
So what is he
coming out with a new promotion? Did you see? I thought Vince might be doing something new.
I've heard all the rumors. I think it's an entertainment company. I don't think he would dare try to do a wrestling project. He's the most experienced and best brain historically for the business, but he's not dumb. He sees the writing on the wall. He might be involved in an entertainment company. I think that's what we'll see, but not wrestling.
It's like Power Slap, but it's called Power Bottom.
He might, like, the guy's got 5 years left on the clock, maybe 10 and $1 billion. He doesn't got to do fuck all else,
But it's tough. He can
shit on chicks in private.
Yeah. I've always said, growing up poor on the East Coast, I would appreciate if $60 million showed up in my bank account. I'd fuck off and not work and just enjoy life and have adventures. But for guys like that who have the work ethic that he had, say what you will about the human being he is, but
100%.
he stops doing that. I'm surprised he's still alive. I figured the minute he stopped, he'd be dead.
That's their real addiction. Is winning against other people, or
Yeah. I mean, listen, I see guys like that all the time. They're 80 years old and they're still showing up to the office, whatever it is, and they don't have to. It's not wrestling, and they're not in front of, and they don't have the fame and all the money, but it's just what they do, So what's it like? So Rock Solid Wrestling's one promotion, right? So I guess there's a couple of others, but like, what's the independent wrestling scene look like? So let me bring it back to your first radio job, and then you start wrestling, and then when's the first time like you're like, oh, I got a gig in Winnipeg? Like, to me, I'm picturing the beginning of Private Parts, where Howard Stern is packing up his car and showing up to town. So you're basically new in town, showing up to a radio gig, finding the local wrestling spot, and introducing yourself to both places, right?
Yep, pretty much.
Okay, so how old are you, and where's the first time this happens?
I was in Ottawa working for the legendary Shea 106 classic rock station, and I let myself kind of establish myself on the air first, dove into the gig, the main gig, for a couple weeks before I reached out, and it happened to be one of the craziest characters in all pro wrestling that was running Ottawa, and that was Hannibal. Abdullah the Butcher, Hepatitis C, sue the WWE, crazy Hannibal. Has bloodlet in every match, Hannibal.
He's been recommended to our podcast.
Wait! Hepatitis C, bloodlet in every match. Oh, damn!
So John hasn't seen the Dark Side of the Ring episode, but
he was he's the promoter of Great North Wrestling, and he was the guy that I was recommended to reach out to. And so he was the guy that was like, ka-ching, legendary radio station. Yes.
Yeah.
And so he was putting me in positions I had no business of being. And through working in Ottawa, because I would talk about it on the radio, obviously, and I got the interviews with all the talents. I was wrestling not for any titles or anything, but I would always be the semi-main, second last match of the night against Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Brutus the Barber, Beefcake.
Awesome.
I worked with Sonny.
You wrestled against Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Brutus the Barber, Beefcake.
Yeah,
that's so good.
Because of the radio game.
Is there footage of this anywhere?
Yeah. Oh yeah. YouTube. You'll find it.
Please, bro. Please. We will connect with all of these things. We're going to connect with all of this stuff.
So I'm getting the sense that name dropping is getting me somewhere here.
Just like money, just like when you're on the radio.
Yeah. Through Rock Solid Wrestling, and I mean, like, they're the opposite of what the Hannibal experience was like. They didn't put me into any position because of my radio-ness, but after I proved myself, and through the Asher Benjamin, like, he's going to manage the main bad guy against the main good guy. Through that, I have gotten to wrestle Ken Shamrock, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, Demolition. All these big names have come through, and it's just like, holy crap. Like,
that's
I've
cool.
watched you on TV, and now we're working together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a dream come true.
I get one question and then you answer it and then three more pop up. But so you're a young guy, you show up to, what is it, Northern Wrestling. And you're getting these money cherry matches because you're on the radio. Are like other guys in the wrestling thing pissed?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure of it.
I would be.
Yeah,
like a TikTok comedian coming into the
dude, that's like 100%, dude, 100%.
Exactly, it's a great comparison. Yeah. So, but I'll hopefully this counts for something. Is I was fully aware of the situation. I would try to be as respectful as possible, and I would just be like, I knew what was getting me in the door. It wasn't talent. It wasn't it wasn't like my physical prowess. It was just what I brought to the table.
And what's probably lost on those guys is, like, hey, say what you want. You're bringing asses in the seats to see them wrestling. And giving them it's great for the business. You know what I mean? I know you can't appreciate that in the moment.
Yeah, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Right. Hey,
high tide lifts all boats, whatever cliche you want to use.
No, seriously. I remember I was like, I was doing Hyenas or something in Dallas, and
sounds like a strip club.
Hey, I did all my strip club going to in New York, but I was in Dallas, and then, like, the person the week was like, "Oh man, Screech was here like 3 weeks ago, and he was such a piece of shit." He's like, "Oh, he was rude to the waitstaff. He's selling headshots."
I've heard wrestling locker rooms tell that exact story. Screech was here 3 weeks ago, and he was an asshole because he did wrestle for a while.
Oh, that's right. So, but I was like, they were like, I go, "Did he draw?" He goes, "Oh man, they sold out. Everybody hated him. They're never coming back." And I'm like, "Well, listen, if the place has got to sell out, and make their money 3 weeks ago so they could take a shot on an all-time ticket low night with me." And I guess I got to be thankful for Screech,
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying, though. It's like, dude, I can't even get a question off. And then you mentioned that Screech was wrestling, and then 3 more questions pop up. But my ADD's on overdrive this episode, dude.
Well, we can't go all night. So if you want to wrap things up with a fight story, I could gladly take you down that road.
Yeah, hit us with it.
Oh, yeah, please.
So I'll tell you two. I'll tell you the last legitimate fight I was in, and I'll also tell you about a legitimate fight during a wrestling show that I was in, but I didn't get to throw hands because of what happened. So when I was on the East Coast, my character, long before Asher Benjamin was a twinkle in anyone's eye, I wrestled as Vinny Glide, a disco dancing, womanizing, greasy kind of disco inferno type character. And the Cardinal Sinners, I think I've mentioned, giant guys. They cut a promo in this small town Nova Scotia in front of 300 people, and they rile the crowd up, and they have everyone hating them. But no one's going to do anything because they're all 6'6".
Yeah.
Very next segment, first guy through the curtain is 5'7" me, and I'm a heel, and I start getting into people's faces, and they're already riled up from those sinners. So this guy he had looked like his tongue was in jail. He had so few teeth. He stands up and he just loses it on me. He cocks back and he swings, and I'm a little quick, so I duck, and then I come up ready to defend myself. And before I could even throw a punch, the locker room's empty, and Flesh Gordon, who's another 300-pound bodybuilding Ontario wrestling legend, he's there, and he's got the guy, and he's pounding him. So I'm just like, whoa. I just hop in the ring, let him get beat, and then the cops dragged his bloody ass out of the show.
Oh no way! Imagine picking a fight with a guy who's 5'7" and then ending up on the dance card with a 300-pound dude.
Yeah, I felt like a mafioso king. Like, I'm the little guy that's running the show, and I got my big boy's got my back.
Your henchman.
I mean, like, I'm assuming you would have gave it to him one way or the other. One way or the other, he was in over his head.
I would have just taken a shot, and then, like, I mean, part of training is to, like, the last thing you want to do is get into a wrestling ring when you don't belong in there, and we know all the tricks of kicking someone's teeth down their throat when they put their head through the ropes, et cetera, because you never know when someone's got something tucked in their waistband, so you can't take any chances. So I would have gone into survival mode, and it's easy for me to say that if Flesh Gordon and the Cardinal Sinners didn't come out, I would have kicked his ass too, obviously.
Right. You never know, but probably. All right, so what's the next one?
When I was in college training to wrestle, I was obviously getting a little more confident about myself. I was kind of the nerd in high school, and I was very self-conscious. And there was this, he was an athlete, and he was like 6'2", and he was a bully. And like, hey kids, you're still going to encounter bullies even in post-secondary school. And this guy, he worked a security guard gig, so he had keys to everyone's room. So I come home from an evening out, and I open my door, and he had mixed dry oatmeal with some like paste, and he spread it all over my room, and my door was locked. And he had been bullying me, and I was like, oh, I know what this guy's. Yeah, I know who this was. So I start pouring myself some double dark rums and cokes, and I'm just sitting up, I'm waiting for the guy because he lives in my residence. I know he's coming back eventually. So he finally comes back to the door, and I've got enough liquid courage in me. I just say, hey, what the fuck were you doing putting that shit in my room? And he's like, wasn't me, man, with a grin on his face. And then another neighbor of ours comes back drunk, and he starts on him trying to talk him into doing shit like, hey man, it would be funny if you smash the glass in the fire extinguisher and start spraying. And I'm like, dude, you're being such a dick. So I stood up and with the liquid courage talk, and I threw my rum in his face, and he just went into a rage, and he came at me. And I've been in enough martial arts classes to know to use a guy's momentum against him. And so little old me, judo threw him over my hip, down on the floor, and I just got on top of him, pop, 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 and then stayed in a mount and was like holding him. And then everybody came out of the rooms, and everybody started sitting around to watch the bully. And I just actually, for 45 minutes, toyed with him. Pop, 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 sit up, get me off you, get me off you. He couldn't get me off him. And when he would almost get me off him, pop, pop, pop. And I just punished this guy for 45 minutes. Unfortunately, when the on-call or on-shift security came and broke everything up, as soon as we got separated, he grabbed another poor security guard and headbutted him in the face and tried to get that toughness back, but it was too late. The whole floor saw the little nerdy dude just wipe the floor with this guy for 45 straight minutes.
Oh, hell yeah. What did he do? Move? Yeah, how do you go back to work the next day, dude? You gotta leave. You gotta move.
So a funny little bow on the end of this story is the very next day, I went to a bong party where it's like BYOB and who's got the best bong. And these guys had made a giant bong out of a bird bath, like a Home Hardware 3-foot high bird bath. And it was like this giant water bong with all these hoses off of it. And I took a hit of that, and I was on another planet. And I was like so high that I'm like, I can't be here. So I went back to residence, and I went to meal hall, and I was so high, I forgot that he and I fought. And when I got my food, I went and sat with him, just me and him at the table. I plunked down to eat, and he's just sitting there, black eyes and stuff, and he just looks up at me, and he's like, "You got me pretty good, McCully. You got me pretty good." And we made up on the spot, and we're friends since.
Oh, that's
nice,
great.
Nice.
That's the way it should be.
Oh, man.
That's
Yeah.
How grateful are you to your brother for introducing you to the martial arts? Is it?
Oh, I mean, him beating the shit out of me and throwing peanut butter at me and whatever we did as kids has just turned me into, like, I'm not a tough guy, but I play one in Rock Solid Wrestling, but I've gotten myself out of situations based on the upbringing that I had, for sure.
Oh, that's wicked.
Well, I think this is a great lead into the weekend. I know we're sponsoring the event. I'm not going to be there. Tyler, you're going to be there. Please get me a Rock Solid Wrestling hoodie. I was looking at them online. They look pretty dope.
We got a big crew coming. So, yeah, we're looking forward to it. Rock Solid Wrestling, Bracebridge at the Sportsplex this Saturday night, 7 p.m. Get your tickets. Check it out. It's gonna, we're going to be pumping it on all of our channels, so you'll see the links. But, thanks so much, man. McCully, thanks for joining us. This is great.
Look for the guy doing the snapping, because he's cooler than you.
There you go.
Asher Benjamin, everybody. Hey, we'd love to have you back sometime, man. Please. Anytime you got something to pump, we'd love to have you.
Sounds good.
Right on.
Would love to.
All right, brother. Later.
Awesome. Just stay on for a minute here. We're gonna do the